What's going on, guys? This is Jane Joku, Sneaker Principal, and welcome to this episode of the Sneaker Principal podcast. First of all, happy Lunar Day, or better yet, happy Chinese New Year's. This is the beginning of the Year of the Snake, and I want to share something with you that was shared with me earlier today about just very briefly about what the year of the snake should bring with it. It's about wisdom, resilience, and transformation. I think that's very important, especially this time as we're entering this new space, presidency, political climate, change, good change and bad change, a lot of uncertainty. And in these days, what we really need is wisdom, resilience, and transformation. So I wish that for all of us. And let's talk about tonight's or this episode's topic. I've been doing a lot of thinking about how and what we teach in our schools. I've had now well over 20 years of experience as an educator in public schools. But then prior to that, honestly, I can just say I've had a lifetime of experience in schools. The things that I learned from the beginnings of my schooling all the way through elementary school, the time I spent in middle school, through high school, through college, through two master's degrees, and the multiple attempts, failure to launch at a doctoral degree programs whatsoever. And one of the things that I've learned in these spaces is that it's acceptable to give baseline information and allow for that information to be accepted as just being fact, and that's it. With the hope that the student will at some point in time seek out more information that will either further solidify that knowledge or disrupt it completely, and often making it seem that you were lied to or had information intentionally withheld. And this is bothersome because I think often the curriculums that we use in schools are written from the victor's perspective, and there's very little done to confirm or to verify or even look at the other side of the stories that are, and the quote unquote factual stories that are put into curriculum. And an example of this, I forget his name. I think his name was, I just want to make sure. Yes. So I was in a meeting not too long ago in which we were going over a curriculum. I'm not going to mention the curriculum because it's not the point. It's not the curriculum's fault itself necessarily. I think this is a systemic issue when it comes to what we provide our children, and trying to figure out who is confirming information and who is saying that this information is the best information to give all children, but even more importantly, at least to me, my children. And when I say my children, I'm talking about me as an African American / Black person in this country who has a fair understanding of the historical context of what's happened over the past, 400 years. So the curriculum we're going over, they're giving us examples of content, directly from lessons that's being taught in this curriculum. And they use the integration of baseball, that story, as the basis in which they were, looking at, heroes. I'm going to make this very general, so to not be too specific, but they're looking at, the roles that athletes played in furthering society and things of that nature, and they talked about integration and all that stuff. So it was a very feel-good story. And they specifically talked about Ricky Branch, who was, I just want to make sure, he was an American. Okay, so he was an American baseball player, but he was definitely known more as an executive who pushed to break baseball's color barrier by signing Jackie Robinson to the Brooklyn Dodgers. We know the story. Number 45. We know all that. We know the Great American Pastime, and we've all seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, it's an amazing film. And the struggles and everything else that came from integrating baseball. The things that Jackie Robinson had to go through. And in this story, it highlights Ricky Branch, and also highlights Jackie Robinson and the few others that integrated baseball, Satchel Paige and others. But as a child, I heard those same stories, like literally nothing different. In 99 Nigeria, when I was in school, before I came to America, in middle school, we talk about, civil rights and we talk about integrations and all those things. And Jackie Robinson comes up, and he's a major figure in the civil rights movement. And you talk about him integrating baseball. Just as a child, you're like, wow, that's amazing. The sacrifices he made to ensure that, Black people could play professional baseball in the major leagues. But I know better than that now, because I went to this place called college. When I was in college, I was allowed to explore and dig deeper into into history and figure out like what was really going on. And one of the things that I think is very interesting, again, this is curriculum, right? And I think this lesson was a 5th grade lesson. And the argument can be made, there's not enough time to go deeper. Like, this is just a surface story. But the problem with surface stories is that surface stories, after a while, become hardcore fact without the presentation of the full story. As what's interesting is no one talks about the fact that after integration, that the Negro Leagues, which had been around for quite a while, and were part of the major economic drivers for many towns and cities, that house a lot of African Americans. The Negro Leagues was an industry, and we're talking about the 1940s. And let me do. Actually, I gotta do a quick math here before I completely. Or I just do. Okay, let me do this real quick. I gotta do a quick math here, so I make sure that I'm giving you proper numbers. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to see. I'm trying to see what the value of something is before I give it to you. Okay, wonderful. So I want you to know this number, $2 million. Okay, so remember, $2 million from the 1940s, which is worth about $45 million today. Okay, $2 million, $45 million. The annual revenue of the Negro Leagues in the 1940s for the black community was about $2 million a year. And some of you might be like, $2 million, that's not a lot of money. What are you talking about? There are people out there whose salaries are $2 million. But we're talking about the 40s. And we're talking about still apartheid America. Segregation was still in full swing. Coloreds and whites, water fountains, no niggers allowed, no Negroes allowed, whatever, depending on where you were in the country, all these things were still in full play. So talk about being not even second-class citizens, no voting rights, no real human rights, being the lowest of society. But communities of African Americans said, they rallied around this sport called baseball. And the young men, and in some cases older men who played this game were quite amazing. And they built their own league. Teams from across the country, they played each other, and they traveled. And they had their own, championships and everything. To the point where a lot of white folks started attending these games, but they were so much more spectacular. The athleticism and the home runs and the stolen bases and the fanfare and the entertainment value of it all, And this is what Ricky Branch saw and said, if I can get that into our professional baseball league, aka not Negro, we could probably make a lot of money. We could probably, make this game America's pastime. Fully America's pastime. So he pushed for integration to bring the star athletes, the best athletes from Negro League, to get them into the Major League Baseball. And of course, Jackie Robinson, who was amazing in his own right, fit the bill in the beginning. War veteran, UCLA graduate, a multi-sport athlete. Like, he was as clean as a whistle. And he used that to convince, the owners, eventually, let's try this thing. It could make us a lot of money. And they said, okay. And you see the movies and all the tough stuff he went through, and the stories and the hate and everything else. But eventually, it worked. They were able to bring other athletes and pay them more than they could have gotten paid in Negro Leagues, because they just controlled the power of the wealth. And eventually, the Negro Leagues faded away into history. A whole entire economic driver for the black community was lost, because they couldn't compete. If you found amazing talent, the major leagues would swoop those up so quickly. Because let's be honest, when you go to a sporting game, it's rare you go to a sporting game and everybody on that team is your favorite, or everyone showed up to see every single person on that team. You usually have two or three. You usually have one person that you're just like, oh my God, this person's amazing. I want to see this person work. If you're lucky, you might have two or three, especially in baseball. A hitter, a catcher, a pitcher. Those three. Someone's just doing something amazing. But now, when you start stealing those few from different teams, and as young people, the young men are like, wait a minute, why should I try out for the Negro Leagues when I can go over here and make some money? And again, it completely abolished the Negro Leagues. So the question is now, did what Ricky Branch do, was that a good thing? It's subjective, right? But this is a story that's not being put into the curriculum. You tell the happy go story about baseball integration without historical context, without having these children dig deeper. What happens is it becomes a soundbite in your ear, and you're like, oh, civil rights, ooh, Jackie Robinson, that was amazing. Go Brooklyn Dodgers. And then you move on. Versus understanding what happened so we don't repeat the same mistakes again, today or into the future. Again, I say all this to say that, or even better, ask the question, who's vetting this information? You know, because I've heard companies say, well, you know, we do our best, and thank you so much for that information. You know, what do you think we can do? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, stop it. Stop it. I read a book. I watched some YouTube videos. Everything I just told you right now about Jackie Robinson and that time frame is just a composite of information I've got over the years. There's not a secret. It's not a secret. No, it's shameful when you present a story based on this archetype of a hero in Ricky Branch. I'm sure he was a decent human being, and you present him as a savior to little black and brown kids. And I'll tell you this, it becomes very hard for them to see him any other kind of way, or to even be able to have a full intellectual discourse about how those events impacted communities negatively versus just the great justice it did for America. There has to be a better way to ensure that we're protecting the intellectual integrity of our children. Which I believe if they had the full story, these spaces, these readings, these learnings would only enhance and motivate and push them to do more. But you got to tell the whole entire story. So again, like I said, I was asked the question, what do you suggest? And I did give a suggestion, which looked to have been complete, in one ear out the other. So what do? I guess it's time for my call to action. I refuse to let anything fly. I ask my team to make sure anything we're teaching in the classroom has been vetted by us as well. Because if I just take the curriculum you give me and say, this is how you have to teach it, I have to also accept the fact that there's a bend on it based on the understanding of the people who created the curriculum. And these people often don't have the same perspective as those of us who live and go through the things that they're thinking that needs to be, presented to our children. But I'll tell you this, on the flip side, I also do wonder why we don't have more people of color collaborating to write curriculum, to say this is how we want our stories told. This is what's important to our children. I wonder about that. I wonder when and how can we have that? And I know what some of you are thinking, but Uche, why don't you start something? That's not my wheelhouse. I'm a disruptor. My job is to be in spaces and create things that last beyond me. In spite of curriculum, in spite of all these other things. So how do you handle that in your school? Either as an administrator, as a teacher, even as a parent, when your children are being asked to do activities or engage in materials that you look at and you say to yourself, wait a minute, this makes absolutely no sense. Or even better yet, this is a warped version of history. What do you do? Who do you talk to? Or do you just let it slide? Please share in the comments. Yeah. So with that being said, this is Uche Njoku, Sneaker Principal. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Be well.